Warning. The following video contains strong language that some viewers may find offensive or disturbing.
Which deceased person, if brought back to life, would be the most surprised to learn they became famous posthumously? Alfred Wegener, who invented tectonic plate theory. No one believed him until long after he was dead. Niels Henrik Abel, mathematician completely unknown in his lifetime, died at age 26 of tuberculosis. Then his mathematical work was discovered, which put him near the top rank of mathematicians ever. When Norway raised a statue of him, they put it on a tall column because nobody knows what he looked like. The poet John Keats, who died at 25, convinced he'd been robbed of a chance to make a significant contribution to English literature. His gravestone literally reads, "Here lies one whose name was writ in water." Quote. Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick, he was considered an unsuccessful writer while he was alive. He only managed to sell about 3,000 copies of Moby Dick in his time. Now it's one of the most well-known classics. Vincent van Gogh, definitely, he just wanted to sell and make his art his whole life. He died without having that. I'm pretty sure he died dirt poor. His grandson made him famous. It was his dream to be famous for his art. And he'll never know because he died before it happened. It was his brother's wife and son who made him famous. Actually. But yeah, it's incredibly tragic that so many artists who are practically worshipped now died without knowing people appreciated their work. Joseph Merrick, otherwise known as the Elephant Man. I think he would be surprised about how many plays, books and even had a movie made about him. Edit. Wow, thank you guys for silver. And yes, I know that Joseph Merrick was famous in time, but I think that he'd be surprised that he's even more famous, but also that today's time he would be more accepted. I mean, you take any composer, writer or painter from centuries ago and they will be surprised. During their life they could have been next to royalty. But to imagine that you are celebrated even after hundreds of years, it's not something easy to wrap your head around. I imagine. So it would be cool to say anyone very respected, like Beethoven, Cervantes or Goya, to know that everyone considers you the best of the best. Even after the rotting time. Might blow your mind. I feel like of all people, Beethoven would be the least surprised. However, anyone before him would be severely surprised because it was a tradition to lose all fame once you died, since nobody would play your music. Beethoven's death started the movement of people playing and conducting dead people's music. And he was worshipped like the next Jesus sometimes. Elizabeth Short, posthumously known as the Black Dahlia. Even people who do not know much about true crime always still seem to know her name. This question got me thinking about all the people that would be surprised at how much notoriety they got from disappearing or being murdered. Otzi the Iceman. It's the earliest surviving naturally mummified human remains. At about 5,000 years old. It would take a while to explain the concept of fame to him first. I remember reading about this in a standardized reading test in 4th grade. It was so interesting that I read it a bunch of times and almost ran out of time to finish the section LMAO edit, since lots of people are asking. I am also 19. I'm torn between Poe and Lovecraft. Both were spectacularly unsuccessful in life. If you go by wealth and fame, it's challenging for a modern reader to grasp how utterly obscure Lovecraft was when he died. Despite Derleth's many faults, he must be given credit for having started the old gentleman's posthumous career by founding Arkham House. And it's difficult to read about Poe's last days without pangs of sympathy. There's mordant amusement in contemplating how Rufus Griswold is now remembered only for trying to bury Poe's reputation with his corpse. Poe was pretty well known at the time of his death. The Raven was immensely popular and he was making good money on the lecture circuit and doing live readings at the time of his death. He would probably be more surprised by the dark, maniacal image or himself cultivated by Griswold. Edward Teach A.K.A. Blackbeard. Dude was a pirate for a few years. He had some reputation, but he wasn't exactly out there for decades doing pirate stuff. And well, he was just another outlaw. Don't think he'd see pirates being romanticized like this coming. Or him being the face of old-timey pirates in general. Ignaz Semmelweis faced ruin because of his insistence on aseptic technique, hand-washing. He would probably wake up and have a heart attack if he found out how important his methods are today. Vincent van Gogh. The dude was severely depressed his whole life and only sold one painting while alive. He eventually killed himself only for his art to be worth millions now. I lived in Amsterdam for a few years and always wondered what Van Gogh would make of the mobs of tourists at the museum dedicated solely to his work. Especially because more visit that museum than the Rijksmuseum next door with countless Rembrandts and Vermeers and other Dutch masterworks. There is an episode of Drive. Doctor Who where they meet Van Gogh. I won't spoil anything about the episode. But it's stunningly beautiful. Edit to include my favorites. This, Vincent and the Doctor, is one of the greatest episodes in television history. In my opinion, edit, critically speaking. But I have other factors at play. Stuff I was going through personally. The people I was with at the time. Things that might not necessarily be objectively better. And which I have referred to as my personal favorites. Separate from best of lists. Blink is also amazing. Terrifying the first time, but Silence in the Library and the partner episode Forest of the Dead takes it for me. I cry every damn time. Shout out to the empty child and the doctor dances. Oh, and I was reminded below of the girl in the fireplace. Such a beautiful episode. The sets were so good. If you want to be deeply unsettled, give Midnight a watch. Pitch perfect performances. I've also been reminded of Asylum of the Daleks and the Doctor's Wife. For lighter things, the Adipose episode is right up there. Also the first episode of S2. And the 11th Hour. Emmett Till. He's not famous enough for the price he paid sadly. This should be higher on the list though. The way he was treated as a human is what made him well known. Emmett Till probably just wanted to live an undiscriminated, fulfilling life like most people I know, no matter what color they are. Unfortunately, it was the way he died that made him famous, so he probably wouldn't have any guess fame was coming as it was happening. I think some of these people may have been able to guess they'd be famous after the art they created and left behind. Most of the people listed here got some chance at life and creating something. Most of them probably wanted some level of fame. Emmett Till became the face of a movement against lynching and racism because of how he died. We must not forget. May he rest in power. Jon Snow. No, Dr. Jon Snow. Look it up. He was the chief pioneer of the germ theory of medicine and considered the founder of epidemiology, as well as the person who proved that cholera spreads through water. Particularly because of the Broad Street Pump incident. His findings and reports were heavily scrutinized all his life. And he was dismissed as a nut and conspiracy theorist. Insert, you know nothing. Jon Snow. Joke here, but those very same reports and investigations are the main reason modern cities have sewers under them. To go the opposite way, I've always thought the ancient Roman emperors like Julius Caesar would be embarrassed at how small their once great empire now is. At its height under Trajan's rule, the empire spanned a greater distance than the modern United States. And now the empire is completely dissolved and their descendants are relegated back to the peninsula. If I were a Roman emperor, I would be proud to know that the Roman state, monarchy, republic, empire, Byzantium, lasted for more than 2,000 years. I would be fine with Italy just being a regular nation, knowing that Latin languages are spoken everywhere and that Roman culture is dominant over the entire Western Hemisphere. Rosalind Franklin. Not even Watson and Crick truly recognized the importance of her work in her lifetime. Now the first thing you're taught in any genetics class is that it was her picture that helped them figure it out. Edit, I think she'd be surprised to learn she's famous now because she was completely overshadowed and unrecognized in her life. Not because I believe she didn't know what she was doing was important. Diogenes. Because as far as I know, the man never aspired to fame. He was just an asshole who lived in an urn in the market square. Never bathed, masturbated publicly, and occasionally started shit with the local philosophical community. His claims to fame are 1. Lobbing a plucked chicken at Aristotle because he thought his definition of what man is was too reductive, and 2. Cussing out Alexander the Great for standing in his sunlight. He may be shocked to learn, first of all, what the internet is, and second that he's basically its patron saint, deity, the father of shitposting. Then again, he may not care. Edit, I realize it's Plato not Aristotle. But I made the mistake and I need to be reminded of it so I won't make it again. Except he was famous though? That's the thing. Even Alexander the Great knew about him and was into teachings. He was pretty hot shit. And the chicken thing was with Plato, not Aristotle. Plus I'm pretty sure he didn't throw a chicken at him. He plucked a chicken, interrupted him teaching and said something along the lines of "Behold Plato's man." J.S. Bach. He was known as a prodigious organist in his time and composed as sort of a side gig. His music was decently appreciated in his time, but as soon as he died he was completely forgotten. As he expected, it wasn't until Mendelssohn resurrected his works in the 1800s that anyone cared for his music. And now he is seen as possibly the greatest composer of all time. He wasn't quite forgotten. His works were well known, revered, and quoted in works by Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, and composers with a keyboard background. His music style and counterpoint even became the foundation of Western music theory that is still taught to this day, which would definitely be a surprise to him. Imagine your works defining a way of thinking across civilizations for the next centuries. But Mendelssohn did reintroduce the Bach works to a wider audience outside of the music circles. Anastasia, the most famous Romanov, and she was a young teenage girl who actually did nothing of note in her life while her sisters, parents and brother were more famous in their time. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. See you next time.